job. Okay, so we're back, you guys. I've created some stills. This is part 2 of our video tutorial. We're going to take a look at adding some pictures to our timeline. I've created a folder called TIFF files. I think I'll call this stills so that we may be all on the same page. And you can see that I have a set of pictures. I'll go ahead and add them to the timeline by a couple of methods. They talk about dragging and dropping, and some of you guys are probably doing this method. Don't worry about the reason my images aren't cropped correctly, but most of you guys are doing this method, right? Simply dragging and dropping, opening up the timeline. You can see by default my images are 5 seconds. Remember, you can go to the Premiere Pro, take a look at the preferences, and then the still image default duration is what you probably have to tweak. Remember, there's 30 frames per second. 30 goes into 150 5 times, equivalent to 5 seconds. So hopefully you guys have some notes on that. So that's a pretty clean method, huh? Just kind of taking an image. I like to double click it to load it, see what I'm working with, and dragging and dropping. Remember, you can always see that snapping icon appear. That lets you know that, hey, you're snapping and you're not leaving any gaps, because sometimes you'll add a clip and you'll leave that gap. And if you're not careful, then you'll continue to edit, and then every time you see a gap, Premiere Pro plays black. So be conscious of that, you guys, that when you're adding clips, you snap them to be safe. If your snapping isn't working, well then here's the snapping feature right here, the little magneto. So you can turn snapping off, and look what happens. It's not even snapping. So I wouldn't even know what's happening. You can actually turn snapping on the fly. If you press S, snapping is now turned on. And look at that. If I press S, it's now turned off. I'll press S to turn it on and snap my clip, looking for that visual indicator, snapping. Okay, so most of you guys are doing this method, huh? You get another clip, you take a look at it, you drag and drop it, right? We've now have 3 clips added to our timeline. But what if I want to rearrange the order of the clips? What if I want this clip to be in the back? You can simply take this clip and drag and drop it, right? But look at that, I didn't snap. I'm going to Command Z to undo. Drag and drop, wait till I see the snap. I'll close these up and snap. So that's one method, right? I'm going to Control Z a couple of times to put that back. There's another method. I can actually drag and drop this here. And to close this gap up, they talk about right-clicking the gap and choosing what's called Ripple Delete. The Ripple Delete command will just close that gap up. Bam! It's done. I like that. I'm going to Command Z to undo to put that clip back. You can see I'm working with 3155. There's a keyboard shortcut, you guys. If I hold the Option key and drag, I believe, let me see, okay. Boom. You can see, look at that. I've moved that clip and repositioned it. I'm actually holding Alt and Control, I believe, on the PC. So if you guys want to add 3 clips to your timeline and play around with this method, but again, maybe I want this clip to be in front. I'm going to drag it in front. I'm going to hold Alt Control. Look at the little symbol I get. I release my mouse, release the keys, and take a look at that. I've repositioned the clip. So these are ways you guys can edit in the timeline if you have a lot of clips and you're like, oh my god, I just want this clip to be in front. Oh no, what do? I have to trim everything, close gaps, it's going to take me an hour. No. Using those keyboard shortcuts, you guys, should help you. So play around with 3 clips, have some fun with that. If you need some help, let me know. What about the timing of the clips? What if I want this clip to be 3 seconds? Right now I can see it's 5 seconds. And there's a couple of ways I can look and see that. I can see because of my playhead, I'm at the 5-second mark. 5 seconds. I'll back up 1 frame. is actually 429. If you go to the beginning, it's frame 0, including 429. That encompasses 5 seconds. Take a look at this. If I go one frame, boom, I'm at the next clip. But I'm at the 5-second mark. Well, what's happening? If I go back, I see the clip, but I'm at 429. Well, remember, you're actually counting that 0 as well at the beginning as a frame. So, just FYI, you guys. Arrow keys will nudge in the timeline, left, right, frame by frame. But if I want to trim this clip, there's a couple of ways I can do that. Using the selection tool, I can grab the clip and I can look for that red bracket. If it's pointing this way, then I'm trimming this clip. If it's pointing this way, then I'm trimming this clip. I can take that clip and trim it. And take a look at what I'm doing. I'm subtracting time from the clip. So I've subtracted 2 seconds, release my mouse, and now that clip is 3 seconds in length. But look at that, I've left a gap. So now there's a couple of things you guys probably do. Maybe you select the clips like this, and you bring them and you snap them to close the gap, right? That's cool. I'm going to Control Z to undo that. There's another method I can now close that gap once I've trimmed the clip. I can right click the gap and ripple delete. Once I do that, boom, that gap is closed. Let me Command Z or Control Z a couple of times to put that back. I'm going to move the playhead to the 3-second mark to let me know that, hey, I want to trim this clip back here. There's a great tool in your tool panel, and it's called the Ripple Edit tool. Let me go to the tool panel. And it's actually this tool right here, the B tool on your keyboard shortcut. This will actually trim the clip and close the gap at once. So I'll select that tool and I'll come here, and using my playhead as a reference, I'm going to trim this clip back with the Ripple Edit tool. Look at that, snapping is turned on, so it's snapping. When I release my mouse, take a look at what happens. The gap is closed. Isn't that cool? So the Ripple Edit tool is your best friend when you're trimming in a timeline. But when you have audio tracks associated with it, you have to be careful. But that's a clean edit like that. You guys can do that. If I don't like the length of this, maybe I'm editing to some type of beat and the beat stops right here, I can now select B as in boy, and I can trim this back using the playhead as a reference and snapping to snap. The gap is closed, the trip is pushed down, and life is good. Control S to save, because you never know. Okay, so the B tool, you guys play around with that tool, have some fun with it, and when you're done, go back to your default selection tool. So a couple of keyboard shortcuts. Also, what if I want to simply replace a clip in the timeline? Like this clip right here, I want to replace it. They talk about dragging and dropping over the clip and releasing your mouse, and I've replaced that clip, but I've actually deleted the length of that. If you have the same clip, same length, you can take a clip, drag it right on top, have snapping help, and bam. Because I know this clip is, let me open this clip up. It looks like it's 228. What I can do is I can load another clip, double clicking. I can grab this and move it so that it's now 228. Like that's 229, so I'll scrub it. So I got 228. Now I can drag and drop, and boom, replace that clip. So you can use the source monitor, you guys, and we're going to be taking a look at this source monitor a lot, because technically you should be loading your clips here and setting what's called in and out points for the duration of the clip. Looks like right now by default stills are 5 seconds, but if I wanted to, I can grab this out point and drag, and look at that, I'm trimming the duration. I'll trim to 2 seconds. And now I can load this to my timeline, and it's 2 seconds. So technically, professionally, how it's done is clips are loaded into the source monitor, and this is where you set them up. And then you add them to the timeline. But a lot of people like to just simply drag and drop clips to the timeline and perform their editing down here. Using the Ripple Edit tool will help you guys trim clips and close gaps. Okay, let's take a look at one more method and then I'm done. I want you guys to go ahead and organize your clips into the timeline however you want. Working in the project panel, I'm going to click the project panel and hit the tilde key. And you can see that opens this up in full screen. There's a lot of columns. You guys can take a look at these columns to see what's happening with your clips. Things of that nature. But I'm going to go to thumbnail view, and it's actually right down here. Here's thumbnail, here's icon. List, thumbnail. In icon view, I can double click to open up those stills and take a look at that. I can look at these in thumbnail views. You can also fly this out and select thumbnails, maybe large, have them larger. So you can actually edit this way if you want to. You can organize your clips by dragging and dropping them. And you can see I'm changing the order of the clips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. So this is actually a cool way of editing when you're working with your stills. You can just open them up, switch to icon view, and drag and drop them. You'll see that black line lets you know where you're placing that clip before you release your mouse. So now that I've arranged them in the order that I want, I can add them to the timeline by Control A to select all. And I can simply drag and drop them to the timeline if I wanted to. But where's my timeline, huh? So it looks like I'm in full screen. I can tilde back out to get out of this full screen mode. And I can actually drag and drop these to my timeline. So here's my timeline down here. So I got all these selected. Control A. And I can just take them and drag and drop them to my timeline. And you can see all the clips come in. I'm using snapping to help me know that, hey, I'm going to reference the beginning. When I release my mouse, there they are. And if you notice, they look like they're in the order that I've organized them. 1, 2, 3. The fourth one should be this, and 5 and 6 and so on. So that's a great way of adding these to the timeline. But there's another method. I'm going to Control Z to undo that. What if I want to place transitions between the clips? Another method would be to select all of your clips. And I think we talked about this last semester. Hitting the sequence, automate to sequence. So what this is going to do is going to actually take these clips and take them to the sequence based on some parameters that you choose. So I got all these selected. I'll click and take a look at this. This box opens up. I want to place them in the selection order that I chose. I believe I always get this confused. Is it the sort order or the selection order? You're going to have to play around with this. You can always Control Z to undo it and then switch this. I think the sort order is what we sorted. So I want the sort order. I want some overlap, maybe 15 seconds overlap or 15 frame overlap before the clips. And I want these to have a default transition. Everything else I'll leave at their defaults. Watch what happens when I click OK and take a look at the timeline now. I'll just close this bin. Because my playhead was all the way down here, you guys, you can see that the clips were added where my playhead was. I'll right click and ripple delete. Close that gap. But now, take a look at what happened. Now I have transitions between all my clips. It's nice and smooth. So you can literally make a slideshow in less than 5 minutes. So that's going to do it, you guys, with this lecture. What you want to do is continue making your stills and add these to the timeline You're going to be adding transitions between your clips, so if you want to use the automate the sequence command, you can. If not, just add them to the timeline and avoid any transitions for now. But let me know if you guys have any questions whatsoever.